White, episode 76. I'm your host, Millie Rouge from the band Vienna Whyte from Edmonton, Canada. This roundtable is a Yeg Music production. I'd like to introduce you to the other host for today, Marissa Kay, who makes up the other half of our band, Vienna Whyte. So, Marissa, could you start us off today by introducing the guests that we have on our show today?
Yes, so we have AJ and we have Sophie Gibson.
Yay, welcome to the
Hello.
show.
Welcome, round of applause. Welcome,
round of applause for the roundtable. We're very, very excited to be chatting with you both today. We are going to dive into New Zealand today. That's where we're exploring. So we're very excited to hear a little bit more background about what it's like. As we're from Canada, I've never been to New Zealand. I don't think you have either.
No, I haven't.
So we are going to learn. But before we start, can you guys just start us off by telling us, again, a brief description of how your musical journey came to be? So, Sophie, can you start us off with your musical journey?
Okay, yeah. Hi. So I am actually originally from Scotland, but I grew up in New Zealand in a small town called Katikati in the Bay of Plenty. Moved here with my family, and my music started sort of through my mum and through my brother. My older brother, he started playing gigs and stuff, and we both learned guitar from my mum. And so I started doing gigs from then on, from when I was about 14 up until now. And I just started releasing music last year onto Spotify and my other platforms and stuff. Yeah, since then it's been really fun being working with a few different artists. And yeah, being awesome.
Fantastic. Did you say your mom was a musician as well?
Yeah, so my mom, well, she's like Catholic, so they did a lot of church like that.
I
And
see.
so I sort of grew up with that. Yeah, and like grew up with harmonies together, me and my mom and sister. And yeah, guitar, piano. She just enrolled me in like all of the music lessons possible for some reason. And ended up really enjoying it when I started playing piano. So yeah, my family's kind of musical.
That's always the best. You need that.
Yeah, and it's funny because I was going to mention that,
for
like,
sure.
like you didn't sound like you were from New Zealand, so I
Yeah.
was curious to know about that. That's really cool. Scottish background. I
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
it.
I love that.
Yeah, so my accent is kind of like a mix between Scottish and New Zealand.
Yeah.
At this
You're
point.
both, yeah.
It's cool. It's unique.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So, AJ, can you tell us a little bit about your musical journey now?
Yep, for sure. That's really cool to hear, though, by the way, Sophie, so that you're from Scotland and stuff. It's awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So my journey started probably quite late, 9 years ago in about 2012. And it started off with me DJing. I used to just love DJing. And then I slowly realized that I just love the attention of being up there. And so yeah, I started playing the acoustic guitar, and I remember the first time I had to play for someone, which was just my family and someone else's family in my lounge, and I was so nervous. But after doing that, I felt this rush, and that kind of got me started. So that kicked off I say about 6 or 7 years of covers. And a couple of those covers, a person that I worked with in Auckland, we actually managed to just take off and get like 20 plus million views on our videos, which was just like, what the hell? It just kind of took off. And then so she actually moved away back to India to do work in Bollywood because of that. And I stayed back here and started doing English covers. So that's kind of how it all started. And then went through a bit in the last couple of years, and then eventually just got urged to start writing my own music. So it's kind of been a fresh journey, and I think 29th Feb this year is when we decided to go with the first single. So 4 singles in now, and it's really cool. Yeah.
Wow. So like
Nice.
lots of new songwriting and new creativity and releasing. That's really, really cool.
Absolutely. And I think like even accent wise, I'm so confused when I sing because I grew up on Ed Sheeran. I just love Ed Sheeran. And that's kind of where my foundation was. But now I'm starting to love just pop music and more produced pop music, especially from Canada, like Ali Gaddy. I just love Ali Gaddy right now. And so yeah, I'm still really confused when I sing as to how I should sing. So still kind of working on the sound, but it's really cool. It's really fun.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. And I mean, like, accents are always tricky.
It's always
I think with
interesting.
like when you're singing, because that's like everyone sings with a British accent, and then
Oh, yeah.
as soon as you don't
Yep.
sing with it's yeah. Anyway, it's a funny thing. That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, guys. That was really interesting to hear about your backgrounds and how actually similar your backgrounds are
Yeah.
with like starting so new, which is really incredible. So yeah, we're gonna hop into our questions here
Absolutely.
for today.
So again, they are revolving around New Zealand, but they still will kind of tap into your musical lives and your journeys. So I'm curious to know, though New Zealand is relatively a small island, we've seen some big names from New Zealand. So like you're saying in the pop world, like Lorde, I know is one of them. She was definitely one of the younger artists I know when she first kind of came into the scene. I want to know what the music scene is like for the younger generations of New Zealanders who are that age of 15 to 18. Now, I know, Sophie, you said you started around when you were 14, so this question is probably perfect for you. If you guys have any experience being young in this music scene, I'd be curious to know the types of support or opportunities that you guys had when you were younger.
Yeah, that's a good question. I probably can't speak for like all of New Zealand, but because I grew up in a really small town, it's sort of different to like growing up in like a big city like Auckland or Wellington, Christchurch. So I think, but for me, that's like a nice thing about New Zealand, like the small towns, is that it's really like local and everybody knows each other and everybody's super supportive. So I think for me, like playing in that restaurant for the first time and like growing up playing at church, everybody was just like, wow, like you're amazing. And it sort of boosted my ego heaps, you know? So that sort of, yeah, definitely boosted the confidence and sort of encouraged me to keep going because I was like, oh, hey, people actually like what I say. That's weird. But yeah, I loved it. And another thing I did as a kid was I took lessons at a place in Mount Maunganui area of Tauranga. And that was sort of run by a lot of like artists sort of in their 20s to 30s, like a drum teacher, guitar and like songwriting teachers and stuff like that, who were all actually doing music in the local scene in Tauranga. So I think that actually gave me like a lot of like, oh, these people are doing it. Like, this is my teacher, she's doing this, so I can probably get gigs around here. So I started doing that, and then yeah, funny story. I After high school, I moved to Chile for some reason, for a year. So I sort of did a little bit of music there as well, and then came back, and now I live in Auckland. Um, so I've sort of been in like a bunch of these different places for music. But yeah, like as growing up for me, that was the awesome thing about New Zealand was like the localness, like small tight knit community that sort of kept me going. Yeah.
That's cool. That's super cool. Yeah, like I'd have to agree with that. I think the church scene is massive here. There's a lot of like choirs and church singers and that sort of stuff. They're all influenced and grow up on that stuff, so that's really cool.
Mm.
I'm personally not from that background, but it's just really cool to see, and that has kind of influenced even the pop sound here, I feel. Um, what else? There's a lot of busking here. So busking's huge in Auckland. Around every corner in the city, there's some sort of busker or some sort of street performer. So that's really awesome to see. What else is awesome here? I think there's a ton of bars and stuff. Have you guys been to Australia?
No,
No.
we haven't. We actually
No.
did a roundtable with Australians last week, which was really cool. So we learned a little bit about the scene over there. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, we haven't been.
It's quite similar to Melbourne, I'd say. I stayed in Melbourne for a few years, and the music and like street performing and bar scene is huge there. And I'd say it's quite
Mm-hmm.
similar in Auckland. Obviously a slightly smaller scale because of the population, but it's awesome. Like there's musicians everywhere. There's amazing producers around every like on every street if you just go walking and looking for them. Like it's just crazy. Yeah.
Actually, that brings up a good point, AJ. Do you find it's like, I don't know if you busk yourself, but do you find there's like more competition to get those busking spots? Is that like very limited to get, or is it easy to find? What do you think about that?
I don't know about the rules anymore. There used to be like licenses that you needed to get. So when I went to Melbourne anyway, I had a license there, and there's two levels of it. So it's interesting. And I think it works quite similar here. I'm not sure if you're aware, Sophie. Have you been busking lately or anything?
I actually haven't been busking in Auckland before, but I did
Mm,
some in Tauranga, and yeah, Mount Maunganui area as well.
yeah, that's really cool. It's a nice area there as well.
Yeah.
I
Have you
don't
done
know
busking?
who me busking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not in Auckland, actually. It's weird. Not in Auckland. I did a lot
Mm.
in Melbourne, which was really cool. Because a couple of those people have really like blown up since then. So I'm just like, yo, that's awesome to have seen
Let's
that like
go.
firsthand from a
Yeah.
meter away. Um, but yeah, I've never bussed in Auckland, but I think you need a license. But in terms of competition, there's always a spot. Like there's always spots available. It's just a matter of finding the right place, I think. Yeah.
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 Yeah, absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
really
I'd say
cool.
like down Queen Street in Auckland, definitely. There's heaps of people down Queen Street, but like busking and
Mm.
stuff. But it's so long, and Queen Street is so long. There's so many stores. I'm pretty sure you could just walk up to any store and be like, "Hey, could I use your power for like busking and to plug in all my amps and stuff?" And just be like, yeah, for sure, go on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
New Zealand is like, I think that's the cool thing about New Zealand as well, is everybody's so like relaxed and friendly.
Yeah, we're so casual. Like if you saw a
Yeah,
celebrity walk down the street as well, like doesn't phase anyone. Like
yeah,
it's just another person. Whereas like where I come from in India, they're just crazy about like celebrities and stuff over there. So
uh-huh.
it's quite interesting. Like they do get a bit of respite, and I think Passenger when he came here with Ed Sheeran once just randomly did like a street performance, and that was really cool. So yeah.
so it sounds like the
Yeah, that's
scene.
right.
It sounds
Yeah.
like the scene down there is like really, really supportive of music
Yeah.
and the arts.
Yep, I would agree with that. I think
Sorry, I
like
think
one of
there's
the
just a
things,
plane flying above me.
It's all
That's
good.
okay.
Don't even worry
You're
about
in
it.
the wild.
Oh, yeah, there's two planes actually, like a plane and a glider.
busy day then, busy
Yeah.
day
Very Mount
for New
Maunganui.
Zealand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think no, the scene's really awesome. I would say that the pop scene, which is and I heard one of your songs earlier, Sophie. It's amazing. I think Reminiscing. I think that's the one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
super awesome. Like the pop scene here though is I find it's quite hard to break into it.
Oh,
Especially
interesting.
from a radio perspective, but it's still quite an active scene. Yeah.
And we got a question from Reddit about what's busting or bussing. It's busking, just so just so you know.
Not talking about busing.
Yeah, busking is when
Busking.
musicians just go and play out in public. Basically, so
Yeah.
when you're walking down the street and someone's playing a song. And that's really cool. That's fantastic to hear about all that stuff. That's amazing. And
You
it's
guys get that in Canada, by the way? Is there a lot of busking there? I didn't see many people when I came.
Well,
it kind of depends on the area. Like in the more
Yeah.
artsy sections, you'll see buskers, but like not on like every corner. Like you'll see them like here and there, but it's
Yeah.
not. I wouldn't say it's as popular as it would be in like Auckland or even like in Europe. I know there's a lot of buskers in Europe, so it depends also what city you're into. Like I know here we don't have a ton.
Well, and I think it also depends on like if there's festivals. Like we are where we're from, we're like considered a summer festival thing. So we have tons of festivals. So that's a great opportunity when you are a busker. But that's 2 months long. Other than that, like
Yeah, it's very
winter.
cold here.
It's
for
cold. You don't want to be outside. So you do like indoor busking, but even that's like a little bit more taboo, unfortunately.
What's
Yeah.
the temperature right now?
So
Oh, it's getting there.
It's 20. No, it's like 18 degrees Celsius. I don't know if you guys are in Celsius or if you're in
Celsius, yeah.
Celsius.
Yeah.
Celsius. Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
we
Oh,
dip
yeah.
down to close to minus 25 is like our coldest,
yeah.
I would say. we
Minus
get to.
25 Celsius.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I
you
think the
serious?
coldest we got, when I was in Winnipeg, it was like minus 40 one day, which was fun.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
What's
Oh my
what's the
God.
weather like in New Zealand right now? Is it nice?
I can show you. I'll turn it
Yeah,
on my
let's
camera.
see.
Yes.
You can have a look. at Mount Maunganui.
This is like a Google
For anyone
tour.
who's listening on Spotify, I'm sorry you can't see how beautiful this
Oh
looks
my
right now.
gosh.
Oh my gosh,
Those
blue
trees.
skies.
It's a beautiful day. So I'm just under
Cool.
the shade from this tree. But
So gorgeous.
yeah,
You're gonna.
it's actually like it's such a beautiful day. Oh, sorry, my friend is in there. Yeah, it's such a beautiful day.
I miss summer.
Yeah. I'm curious to know, what are your winters like then in New Zealand?
When you're like busking and stuff, does that affect your performances at all when it gets a little bit chillier, or no?
So winter here, it doesn't get like super cold, not like Canada, like nothing like that. And not like Scotland. I sort of think of it like this, like summer in Scotland is like winter in New Zealand. So it just gets a little bit like colder, a little bit like rainier, more stormy, but like I think like we get a few frosts where I am. Like, well, actually some places you don't get any frost in the winter, but it's like a little bit of that, and then it's pretty much straight into spring. I think it's not. Yeah, it's pretty like mild. The temperatures don't go super high or super low. It's like sort of, yeah, quite
Well, that's
consistent.
good.
Really.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
It's also like you get all 4 seasons in a day in Auckland, so winter's probably this afternoon. Kind of just waiting for it.
Yeah, that's
it's
also
really interesting.
That is something we have in Canada too, actually, which is
In fall
hilarious.
time,
But
yeah.
and actually, that's a beautiful segue into my next question. So
Yeah.
here in Canada, when you think of the major cities, and AJ, we talked about this before the call started. You were mentioning that you came to Canada, you went to Toronto and Vancouver.
Yeah.
So when you think of certain countries, you have certain major music cities in your head. So when you think Canada, you think Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto, or in the States, you think New York or LA. And so lots of artists from smaller cities will often kind of flock to those cities to promote their music. In your opinion, what's your take on promotion in the music scene in Auckland? And do you lean more towards local promotion or international promotion?
For me personally, I'm doing a combination. So because of the whole streaming game, it's just changed the game completely now that we have access to the whole market. So for me, for some reason, the songs seem to be hitting off in India. I think it's just because I'm from India, but I think the community in Auckland, especially the Indian community here, though I make English pop music, is it's quite prominent here. And so for me, I want to win a community over at a time. That's kind of my strategy. So we are kind of actively promoting Auckland and aiming to hit the radio here as well, commercial radio. So that it's kind of split. It's kind of split between international. But I think entering the US and Canadian market will be really difficult from a pop perspective. You'd really have to blow up somewhere else first. So definitely the focus is to win over communities in New Zealand and Australia and India slowly before kind of pushing for US and Canada. But then again, the collaborations with DJs and other things are kind of coming up as well. So that helps from that perspective. Yeah. Be interested to hear what Sophie, kind of what you do.
Yeah, so I'm sort of new to doing promotion and stuff. Like this year was my first time really giving it a decent shot. And so I did a few things. So I had this, well, Reminiscing, the one that you heard. That was my first thing I released like solo. And I really, really focused on like very much local scenes. So I did like, I don't know, I hit up like friends in radio in Whakatane. I had a friend who runs a radio station there. So went over and did that and submitted it to like local newspapers and stuff. And then they would submit their stuff onto like the New Zealand Herald and things like that. So that was sort of, I think what happens with me is like when you focus a lot on the local community, it sort of like spreads outwards naturally, which I think was really good. But another thing I did this year was it was a project for a video game called Beyond Blue. And I wrote a song called Something in the Water that went on that video game. And that was somebody I met in Auckland, but she is actually from the US and she was a music supervisor for that video game. So a lot of her contacts ended up being like US based. And of course, the video game is a US video game. So that sort of got a little bit more like international recognition rather than local. I wasn't like in charge of doing the promo for that. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see where that goes, because I actually looked at my Spotify and I had a lot of listeners from like Malaysia and Chile and Peru, and like, yeah, a bunch of other places I just never would have thought would be like streaming my music. So
Mm.
that was really interesting for me.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's weird, eh? Like I think one of the new things I want to try with the next couple of singles, we've written some Spanish songs, so
Oh, cool.
not singing fully in Spanish, but like the vibe is very reggaeton, which is like really
Oh,
cool.
yeah, I like
So
reggaeton.
we're planning to try and promote it using Spanish dances on TikTok and stuff. So just giving that a go. So that'll be
Yeah,
really interesting to see how that works in Barcelona and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay, when
yeah,
they're
for
released,
sure.
we need them because we need to dance
We'll
to
learn
them. We'll learn the dances and we'll
dance.
post it on our TikTok.
Oh yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. And it's interesting because you know, like you said, you've got listeners like from Malaysia and Peru and stuff. It's really weird because when I dropped my second single, the next morning I woke up to the London Post who had kind of picked it up and
Wow.
twittered it and put it on their main site and everything. And I was like, what the hell? Like, what just happened? So it's really interesting. It's really weird to see kind of where these pockets of growth appear. So
Mm.
yeah.
Do you find that maybe it's because New Zealand is kind of like a place that can be very touristy, especially in a big city like Auckland? Do you think that maybe that could be a thing, or do you find that there's a lot of artists flocking to Auckland because of the music scene there?
That's a good question. I think, well, because I think also in New Zealand, Wellington is quite a big music scene as well. So, but it depends what style. So Wellington music scene is sort of more like jazzy, and then Auckland you have more variety, like more pop sort of stuff. I know a few people who've moved up to Auckland for music. I guess I'm actually one of those. So, yeah, I'd say so. Because
Oh,
We lost her.
We
It's
lost her.
all
She'll be
good.
back in a second.
all good, all good. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. Like Auckland's one of we have a lot of backpackers here, and I think they all kind of come from like Europe and stuff. I don't know why, because all our people go there, to go backpacking. But yeah, they all come from Europe and stuff, and there's a pocket in the city called the Viaduct, which is like the harbor, the main harbor, and there's a bunch of like clubs and stuff over there. So the scene there is really nice at night. Um, and there's another pocket called Ponsonby, which is like the more posh kind of night out place. So there's two kind of pockets which get really cool on the nights. And I think, I don't know, like we've got a young population, but we've also got a growing, like an aging population. So it's a good balance. So you kind of have a little bit for everyone there. I feel, yeah.
We lost Sophie, but I'm sure she'll come back in. So we'll just we'll keep our conversation going.
I
But
won't be as boring, guys. Don't worry.
now it's become an interview.
No, it's all good. We'll get her to hop back on in a second. It might. She mentioned her Wi-Fi was freaking out, so we'll try to get her back as soon as we can. But yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's kind of as you release music, it kind of the music and the audience age with you, which is really neat, I find.
It's really cool. And I think like one of the strategies, if we go back to your previous question, and I've seen major labels do this a lot because they have the bigger budgets behind them, is actually working with a well-known US artist that's already broken the market there. And we've seen this like time and time again. Like even with Lord, it was kind of pairing her up with someone over there. Drax Project's another one. 660 are really good. Like 660 is one of the bands that have kind of come out of here that are kind of working in the US scene right now, but they're really massive here. Like every barbecue you go to, you'll hear 660. It's just one of those things, but it's really awesome. Like it's quite a diverse scene. Yeah.
I've never heard of 660, so I'm gonna make sure I look them up now.
Yeah, look them up.
Very cool.
That sounds really
Awesome.
cool.
So we'll move on to our next question, and I So country music, I was actually looking this up. I was doing a little bit of research, but country music was one of the biggest genres in New Zealand from the 60s around to the 80s, which I find very interesting. But I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on, for example, like country music having a large impact on the newer music coming out in 2020. So have you noticed any genres that have had kind of that lasting effect for, like, let's say like Generation Z musicians or millennials, like any previous music that's made an influence? Do you find in New Zealand at all?
There is a big country scene, eh? Like for me, I don't know so much about it, but I have a really close friend, Keith Pereira. And he was actually on TV doing an interview with one of the guys because he was supposed to launch this year. And Keith, if you're watching this, man, like, but no, so like there is a big scene because I've gone to his gigs and I've seen the crowd, and there is a huge country crowd. And there's a huge country scene. And he was actually saying that when he went to US and Canada, he had massive support from there as well. So yeah, no, in terms of influencing current music, I almost think that genres don't even matter anymore. Like everyone's kind of just doing what they feel. And like the mainstream market has kind of taken a full circle, I feel. We're kind of coming back into that hip hop trap scene. And it's slowly, I feel it's moving into the rock genre again. Like I feel you're going to have a hip hop rock blend going forward. But yeah, it's really interesting. Like I think all all music kind of has influenced the current sound, and there's just this mesh of genres going on right now, which is really cool. Yeah.
I love for that. I live for that too. I think that's great.
Yeah, well,
What
and
what
it's
what? Yeah. What's it like in Canada? Because it'll be like the weekend's doing all this weird like synth pop stuff now, which I'm
Yeah,
really enjoying. And it's just like that kind of stuff.
very
In US
70s.
and Canada, which
yeah.
is kind of yeah, it's all over the place. Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting that you bring up the whole idea of like genre doesn't matter anymore. I love that idea because
Yeah.
it's I mean the hardest thing as a musician when people are like, "What's your sound like?" And it's like, "Well,
You're
I
like,
don't know. It's a little bit of everything." And it's like no one ever wants to say just one genre. Like even for us it was hard. We're like pop, indie, folk, I don't know. But I guess it depends where you are cuz here in Alberta, we're like we have a lot of especially in Edmonton and Calgary, like
big
central
country.
Alberta is very country. Also like
Mm.
jazz is kind of huge here too. There's like a
Yeah.
lot of jazz
Yeah.
here. And it's harder for like I'd say pop and like the hip hop scene
It's
and like the R
trickier.
and B scene here. I think it's starting to grow, but yeah, it's different everywhere. But I totally love that idea of genre being like
Yeah.
obsolete. I would love it if that were the case, but we have to put things into boxes.
Yes. Well, even
But
like
I think like
Vancouver.
it's
No, go ahead.
sorry, you go.
Well, I think Vancouver and Toronto is just like they're more of like that indie rock, more of that pop. And even if you think about like Shawn Mendes, Justin Bieber, Drake, they are kind of more in that pop based scene. So I think we are a little bit more pop orientated, I want to say, with a little bit of country too. So that's what I would kind of classify it under. But what were you going to say?
I can't even remember now. But what is the secret? Because like yeah, like I was just thinking before this, like you've got Drake, you've got Justin Bieber, you've got so many amazing, and like Ali Gaddy's coming up, and I'm just loving his stuff, and it's just like so interesting.
Well, I
Yeah, what
think
is the secret?
Shawn Mendes was found through
Covers. I think
Tick,
Shawn Mendes was
yeah,
covers.
Vine, I
Yeah,
think, or covers, and
yeah.
then Justin Bieber was busking kind of thing. Drake was
Mm,
in a TV show, so that was media.
mm.
Um, I'm just trying to think of who else is like really well known in Canada.
Celine Dion,
Celine
but
Dion,
she
but I
did
don't
it
know
like
how
the
that.
old fashioned way.
Yeah, that was too long ago. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But I think people are definitely taking advantage, like you're mentioning, AJ, about like social
Mm,
media and like, especially those platforms like TikTok. Like if you get on them fast enough, I think it
mm.
can make a huge impact and you can blow up because no one
Oh
really
yeah.
knows where you're from. They just
Well,
like your voice.
and like you mentioned before, like you were trying to create songs that people can dance to on TikTok, and I think that's something that not everybody would think of like 5 years
Yeah.
ago. You know, that's a thing. That's a brand new thing.
Yeah.
Mm.
When it comes to trying to be creative with your promotion, what are some of the ways that you try to really branch out outside of like we're trying to create TikTok dances and is there any other ways that you're trying to utilize social media to kind of have all guns firing, as they say?
Well, I might kind of give away my secret here, but what I'm planning to do is charge a monthly subscription for people that want to listen to all my unreleased music through Patreon. So have an unreleased playlist on SoundCloud or something which is private, and they're welcome to share it with their friends and stuff. But I'm planning to just do like a monthly like $5 subscription or something like that, and I'll give it all for free downloads. So, you know, they can take all my unreleased stuff. They can rip it if they want and rewrite it and whatnot. And like it's just stuff like that. It's the creative stuff that, and just, you know, passing on stuff. DJs are a big hit here. So I think like just passing on music to DJs, and even like yourselves. I think I asked you all if you wanted to use some of my songs before this.
Which we listened to, by the way,
Yes.
and I was like totally digging it.
Yeah.
Especially like as soon as I heard the Spanish one, I was like, wait, hold on a second. And I was like, it was cool. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, and it's just weird stuff like that. And I think there's a cool blog or vlogging channel called Burstimo. I don't know if you guys have heard of them on YouTube, but they talk about how just try and find the next thing that you think is going to hit and just try. Because at the end of the day, like labels, I feel labels are still stuck a little bit between the streaming age and the previous age. And yeah, whereas like I think the key for independent artists, because we don't have budgets, is to be as creative as possible and look for the next thing that we think will hit. And it's probably not TikTok anymore, to be honest. Like I almost feel like that wave's passed, but I could be wrong.
TikTok is old news. That's true.
Yeah, and like there's always going to be something new, and like you always want to hop on it as soon as you can to try to get ahead of it, because like I always found that the people who get the biggest are the people who've been on the platform the longest,
Yeah.
and who are able to catch that first wave of like everybody
Success,
coming in.
yeah.
And like it's like you mentioned, like we didn't even get on TikTok fast enough, and we joined like back in December, I think, which was like already TikTok was like already old news by the time we joined. So
Yeah.
it's tricky for
And,
sure.
and what's really interesting, and this is quite a touchy subject for a lot of people, but like it's a male dominated platform, YouTube especially. So it's being a male is actually, it makes it a bit harder to be creative and get in front of the right audience on these kind of platforms because of the demographics, which is really like it's something that I don't overthink about, but it's kind of like it's really interesting. It's really interesting to observe that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That I've never really thought about that either. Being a little bit definitely more difficult, and I think that's partially because audiences look for a certain thing, right? Like whatever that is they're looking for, you know.
Yeah,
Like,
well, and it's always trying to like make sure that you're standing out amongst the competition too, which is
Yeah.
always tricky, like anywhere you're going. So yeah, you gotta be more creative, which is what I appreciate about what you're doing, which is
Yeah.
super cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it's funny that we're talking about all this like promotion and work, because it's a lot of things that people don't realize is what musicians go
Behind
through.
the
And
scenes.
yeah, so often musician and artists suffer from burnout with all the work that we do outside of playing music. And we discussed this before on a different roundtable of how taking a break from music has actually helped artists reignite their passion and their drive for music. So what do you do to combat that burnout, and are there any routines you try to stick to?
So this actually also ties back to the last thing. So people have known me for being a cover artist over the last 6 or 7 or 8 years. And I did stop that for a bit before kicking off and launching as an artist. But I think like brand presence is super important. And going back to the promotional aspect as well as the burnout aspect, I did a random cover of this song called Lemonade by Internet Money, which is just popping right now in the pop kind of hip hop scene. And I kind of asked the fans to send and friends to send videos in. And I did this before once for COVID as well, to kind of try and get the community together and just do something fun while like all this crap was happening around the world. Um, and I think like that's one of the things. So I like editing videos, and one of my closest friend is an amazing director and videographer who does all my videos. And so like that for me is another thing to kind of focus on the side. So like doing a fan made video, it helps promotion because they'll all want to watch how their clips that they've sent and end up looking and how the video looks. But at the same time, it's kind of like it gives me that off from music. Um, and that might just be 2 or 3 days. But the other thing about burnout though is you tend to burn out because of your attitude towards it, I find. And a lot of the time, like I've really stopped focusing so much on what the end result of a song or anything will be, and just focusing on enjoying the process of making it. And that has changed my whole world. Like just being like, oh my god, I'm just loving doing this right now. I'm just loving like playing with these sounds, and I'm loving like singing it in different ways and experimenting with lyrics and stuff like that. Is just focusing on that process for me has just completely like I don't burn out. I just want to keep making more. So that's really cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You have such a good outlook on that.
I also like that idea of your attitude towards it can also cause burnout, because that, like, I totally didn't realize that until you just said it, and I was like, and I was like, absolutely, which is crazy, because that's often I've seen so many artists just like lose their passion for it because they're just like, this doesn't feel enjoyable anymore. But I think it's looking at it.
Yeah, they get caught up in the money aspect too sometimes.
Yeah,
they're not even
where they're
thinking
like,
about
I'm not making enough money.
Yeah.
I'm gonna quit music.
Yeah,
it's like,
which
And
is sad.
You can't ignore that, right? Like that is a very, very important. And like next year for us is all about commercialization and monetization and focusing on that. But at the same time, I think you have to remember that why did you start doing it in the first place? And what's changed to make you change that kind of outlook on it? Because that why is so important. And Simon Sinek goes on about this concept of like start with why, which is all about like find your reason for doing something. And you know what? Sometimes maybe music's not the right thing if you're you know, you've started getting into it and you don't really enjoy it. It's fine. Like things change over time, and your attitude and your life changes and your situation changes over time. So it's all about accepting that as well. Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
And I think the start with why thing, we talked about that too on the Australian one.
Yeah.
On the Australian Roundtable, we were talking about how people care more about you as an artist when they understand why you do it, not what you do. Like, you could be the best artist in the world, but like, if you don't tell anybody anything about yourself, they're like, well, why should I care? Like, yeah, you're good at guitar, but like, what else?
Like, who are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, who even are you?
What is your why? I'm curious.
Ooh.
Ooh, we're being put back on the
How are we
spot.
being interviewed?
We're
This
being
isn't about us. Now
We
I'm
can
all
switch up now.
uncomfortable.
We can switch up.
No one ever asks us questions.
Yeah.
Now we're on the spot. This is not what I'm used to being in.
You're like shuffling through all these papers, like shit. what do you
Yeah.
do?
Oh no. Like, oh no. No, I'd say our why is, I mean, we both kind of grew up doing music for a long time, and we were not really succeeding very much as solo artists, because we were both solo artists before we combined forces. And then we both kind of wanted to create something that we wouldn't normally make as solo artists, and we wanted to kind of distribute the weight of the work of everything, because we were just both burning ourselves out working on our own. And we found that working together was, like, one, way more fun, and then two, we get to create music together, and then three, it's just easier. So our why is, like, we just really love music and we want to keep doing it. And in order for us to keep doing it, we were like, we got to work together.
Well, and I think another great thing too is we both believe in like the power of female. So being like a Canadian female duo, that's something like that's really important to me. And I think like we both have similar artists that we both really like. So I think we both have a very kind of solid idea of who we want to sound like and who our audience is and who we want to be reaching out to, right? So I really like that question. Thanks for turning it back on us.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And there's one thing I picked up that you said that you weren't very successful. I'm curious to know what you defined as success at that point.
That was literally our last question. How are you
Are you
predicting
looking
these
at our
things?
notes?
Are you like screen sharing with us or something?
Your
that's
producer's-
amazing.
That was gonna be our
producer's
question for
sneaking
you.
me, like, yeah, your producer's sneaking me things in the background.
We should hire you for this show. I
Oh
think
my
you're
god,
great.
yes, guest host with host AJ. That'd be awesome.
But yeah, to answer your question,
It's really hard to say for us because it changes every single time. I think what we define as success is, I think, getting the same people to come back every single time and like creating a really, really great community. Yeah, I think that's what we're really going for, especially with these roundtables and with we used to do an Instagram live show that we still talk with people that we've had on that show before. And like, it's the whole reason why we're doing what we're doing with these shows is we want to create a community with other artists and our fans as well. So it's one of the reasons why we love Reddit so much.
Yeah, we do stream on Reddit, and we get we have this nice little closely knit family of people that come back and they're like, oh, it's so nice to see you. Like, someone asked me the other day in the live stream, they're like, how was your shift last Friday? And it was just like, I think for me that's really important, to have actual authentic relationships with people too, especially through your
with
music.
people who will keep coming back too. It's not just like a one and done where they'll just keep scrolling, but it's like an actual like dialogue, I guess is what we're going for. And because I feel like it's better to have 100 really close like well dedicated fans than having a million followers.
Yeah.
You know, that to me that's more
100%.
valuable, and to me that's when I feel more successful, is when you can actually
Yeah.
have that connection with people. But what about yourself,
That is
AJ? We're gonna turn this back around on
again,
you.
No, it changes. It changes, like you said. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, it's all about them. I feel like this, like the thing. I want to tell my story, but I want to make it about them and about the audience. Because I feel like as a musician, we have this responsibility to speak up for people that can't do it themselves, almost, or don't want to do it themselves, even though they might be able to. So it's one of those things, like I want to speak on behalf of them but tell it through my stories. um it's But I guess in terms of defining success, I'd say that if I can develop a really strong connection with someone through the lyrics or through the beats or through the music or whatever it is, that for me is like really successful. If someone can messages me and says, "Hey man, this really helped me," or something like that, that would be the best thing for me. But I guess from a goal perspective, I want to be bigger than Ed Sheeran. Like that is my I want to play arenas.
I love
So
it.
And
there's
then we
kind of
get to
two
say
aspects.
like we get to say in 5 years from now that we like, oh yeah, we talked with AJ, like we know him very well.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say the same thing about you guys. I'm like, oh, when your blog becomes this massive thing, or like your community becomes this massive thing, and you become these big people
Yes.
on YouTube, it's like, yo, I was on the show, guys.
That's the goal for both of us. Both of us. We're both going to blow it up.
Oh, I love it so much.
But what's really cool is like, it's like you said, it's people always seem to focus, and this is a generalization, like not everyone's like this, but in general people seem to focus on the blowing up and going viral and this and that aspect. But what my friend group has, and my manager and stuff have kind of realized, is that it's so much about the process and just building it step by step. And like maybe you get 2 new fans tomorrow who are real fans and really into your music and your story tomorrow, and then 2 more the next week, and 2 more the next week, and over time you just have this like community of amazing people that you have like a real relationship with, and that's super important. Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
can kind of develop
Over
over time, but you don't really even notice sometimes. You're
it's
kind
like
of
a snowball.
yeah, you wake
Yeah.
up one day and you're like, oh, I've got this awesome people in my life that care and
Yeah.
truly
But I
genuinely
think
like your music.
yeah, I think your intentions behind it have to be genuine and authentic, because people, like you
Yeah.
said, people can see right through that if you're just trying to go viral. Like half the time when I'm scrolling on TikTok, they're like, this would be great if this wasn't fake. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty fake, and you just like keep scrolling. So
Which is
Yeah.
interesting you say that. Like just last night we've decided to make all these beats and just make like 15 seconds clips for TikTok, because you know what, if we go viral with something like that that's silly, then who knows, they might come back to our actual stuff.
It's true.
yeah,
It's
sometimes it
true.
can work out that way. So you
Yeah.
never know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that was actually our last question for today. We're out of time, but we're so lucky to have had you on and Sophie when she was here. If you guys are at home watching this roundtable with Vienna Whyte, make sure to follow us to be notified about our upcoming shows throughout the week. If podcasts are more your styles, this conversation will be uploaded to Spotify very, very shortly here. So make sure to check that out at the Vienna Whyte podcast. So I'm Millie Rouge, one of your hosts, and this is Marissa Kay, your other lovely host. Marissa, where can you find our band on the internet?
You can find our band on the internet at www.viennawhite.com or at Vienna Whyte on Instagram. Vienna, like the city, White spelled with a Y, because we're trendy.
Now, AJ, can you tell our audience, just say your name once again and where our audience can find you on social media?
That's really cool, by the way. I need to practice something like that and have it rehearsed and ready. Yeah, so you can find me on the ajsound.com. And hopefully the ones that are watching can see my name down there. It's pretty simple. And the AJ Sound on Instagram as well. But basically, if you Google the AJ Sound, you should hopefully find it. But I just want to give a big shout out to all my friends and fans and whoever else is watching this, and really appreciate that, and really appreciate you guys for having us on the show. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity. It's been awesome. And if you ever come down to Auckland, you've got a friend.
Yes.
And yeah, cool.
Awesome.
Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And because Sophie can't be here to promote herself, we're going to promote her. You guys can find her Sophie Gibson Music on Instagram. That's Sophie with a PH and an IE, Sophie Music Sophie Gibson Music on Instagram. So you can check her out there. And thank you, everybody, so much for watching. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. AJ, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much. See you. Nice to meet you.
You too. Lily.